Hello all and welcome to part 2 of my caricature video. So I'd let you off with basically the caricature of Ricky. Just a quick thing that I strangely do is I always leave the actual eyes to the very end. I don't know why, because they're the first thing I draw when I'm penciling, but I don't tend to finish the eyes of the main caricature off until the end. Literally no clue why, just a habit thing for mine. So once I'd finished the sort of scale drawing of Ricky, in this case I drew the picture of the dog in. I did it kind of with the outline rather than in much detail because I was a bit nervous really, and I was going to leave that in towards the end before doing some of the darker shades. I just wanted to get the position in, and I also kind of inked in Ricky's body. After that I drew all of the kind of smaller caricatures of the other cast and composed the image around him. I'm not sure I got that quite how I initially planned, but I got as many characters in as I could. If you'll see from the sketch, I put Roisin Conaty's character far left, and I kind of knew I needed to put more characters in, and that character felt a little bit clunky and a little bit plonked in. So I kind of needed to revisit that one. So I basically redrew Roisin's figure, put Mandeep in, and then inked the faces. And it's a very similar process to the way that I did the main caricature, in that I will pencil them out roughly, use the computer to tighten the sketch, and then on the computer again I would complete the drawing with the pen. Once their faces are done and I've roughed out where their bodies are, I then kind of start filling the rest in, and the background. I have a really bad habit of not always planning my drawings. I have a rough idea, but in the case of this Ricky caricature, I didn't probably plan it as much as I should have done, especially considering how many figures I wanted to put in the picture. I had initially planned to put characters from every show that he'd done, but there were so many people I would have to fit in that they'd have been so small as to really have just ruined the composition. So I had to specifically target Afterlife and put a few throwback things in for previous shows, like the stapler in jelly from The Office, the guitar come from The Office and the David Brent film, the clipboard from Extras, Equality Street from a song he did for Comic Relief, and the rug is actually the design from Derek's cardigan. So I kind of threw those things in. The colour process again is very similar. With the smaller ones in the background, I tend not to do so many layers on it. So the first layer I'll do with blush, then I'll go straight in again with a satin rather than do layers of blush, and then go straight in again, maybe with a dusky pink. Depends how it looks with the satin, and then kind of build it up as is required with a picture. And I might use a warm grey one or two again. In the case of Mandeep, I left her for a while because everybody else's skin tones were going to be roughly the same. I just did them all at the same time, and I also started colouring in Ricky's arms and neck. And so I kind of finished those off, polished the faces off as much as I could. Then I did Mandeep all in one go, and I think I started with a primrose yellow, then used a sandstone and a caramel for the darker, or for her darker skin tones. Again, as I said before, when I actually finished it, I was really worried because the tones of her skin didn't look quite right, so I was fiddling a little bit. But as soon as I sort of put her darker hair in, it worked as it usually does. It's kind of weird that I have this mindset when I know once I've finished, the blacks will change the tones altogether. And so after that, I would do the hair of each of them bit by bit, and then I kind of have a bit of a scattergun approach. I literally will kind of jump from side to side, from picture to picture, from person to person, just doing bits at a time. It generally makes no sense. It's just what goes into my head at any particular moment. And again, I'm still doing that because I'll do a little bit of the background, then I'll do a little bit of the figures again, and it's very random, really. At this point, I knew I needed to commit to the dog picture. It was a bit that was worrying me the most, to try and get the right colouring in the dog, the right shading. Sorry, I can't remember the dog's name, it's terrible. And also, again, I still don't want to put the blacks in, rather the solid blacks, because I still have the problem of colours bleeding if I put them next to each other. Once I'd finished the dog, I then started introducing some of the blacks. Just kind of adding these little bits all the way through, and just adding the black. And also I tend to darken the outlines of each of the little caricatures. I'll do a little kind of almost a double thickness line around them. And on the main caricature, I will outline the whole face and body, usually using a brush pen. It just kind of makes it stand out a bit more, regardless of what the tones are and the colours are. I think the last things I was doing were the hair, the clapperboard, Ricky's hair as well, because there's some very, very dark areas in his hair, obviously his eyes. Actually, I'm telling a lie. The very, very last thing I did was the little bits of white on his beard and in his hair. I didn't want them really, really grey, so I kind of have to put the pen on and quickly just do a quick wipe with my finger. And then once I'd finished that, I actually changed the shape of Ricky's face slightly. I realised maybe his chin was a bit longer than I wanted it to be, so I actually went in and I slightly shortened his chin. Luckily, because I'd got the black under his chin and everything, I could do that quite easily. What I also tend to do right at the very end is do a last quick pass to make sure I've hit everything, I've done everything. There was one caricature I did once where I actually made a list of all the things I had to do to make sure that I didn't miss something, because it's quite a complex one. I think there was probably a similar number of figures to this, and because of that scattergun approach, I'd actually missed some stuff and hadn't noticed some stuff, and had to go back and revisit it. And then caricature finished. I was really, really pleased with it. It worked how I wanted. Everything kind of balanced quite well. I was actually weirdly really thrilled with the background, which is a strange thing to say maybe, but that just seemed to work really well. I actually had to go on Google and walk down the street and look around to try and actually get an idea of what it looked like, because initially I drew it and it turned out that I'd got some information wrong and I had to kind of do a quick save on some of it because the photo I was using wasn't clear and I misinterpreted some of the information. You might notice there's an archway on the right hand side of the picture. Not an archway, an arched window. That's not an arched window at all, but the photo I was using as reference looked like an arched window. It wasn't until I actually walked down the street that I saw that it wasn't. And yeah, so that was it. That was completed. I was pleased with it. Posted it on Twitter, and bless him, Ricky retweeted it, which was fantastic and a massive ego boost for me. Okay, thanks for listening. Just going to do a quick plug for my comic book, which is Marked. It's a fully completed 228-page supernatural, dark and violent graphic novel, available through Indiegogo. I'd appreciate your support.